Hey, IT changemakers, and welcome to the DEX Show with Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
It's the DEX Show. It's Tom McGraw here with you today, and it's a very special and unique occasion for me, I have to say, right? Because as DEX Show host and next thinker, I get to work with a lot of really good people and good friends. I've been doing this a few years, so across next think, I've got a lot of people I count as friends and even close friends. And this person, I not to pick favorites, but she's definitely up there. She is definitely up there, and she's so up there that in all these years I've been doing this show, it never occurred to me to invite her on, which you could say indicates something really terrible, or in fact indicates, I think, so I couldn't see the wood for the trees. I was so close to this person. I could just never imagine recording one of our conversations, and it took somebody else to say, "Hey, why don't you invite Laura Reeves on?" It suddenly seemed like the most obvious, best idea I'd heard all day, and for a lot longer than a day. And I'm delighted to welcome her for the first time to the show. Laura, hello. Introduce yourself, and if the audience don't know you, tell them who you are and what you do for us.
Thank you for that intro, Tom. And yes, I mean, as my Next Think bestie, I'm honored to be here. So, yes, I mean, as you said, we've known each other for over 7 years, and I do feel like we could have recorded many of our chats and made them into a podcast. I'm so glad we finally are. So, thank you for the warm welcome. So, just to introduce myself, I'm Laura Reeves. I live in London, and I'm a client director at Next Think. And in my capacity, that means holding overall responsibility for the relationships and partnership between Next Think and some of our most innovative, scaled, and complex clients. And I act as a strategic sponsor and an executive connection for those clients.
Absolutely. I meant to say, I often end up through you, Laura, getting to work with some of the most impressive DEX professionals, some of the really world-leading digital workplaces. It's always fascinating, the partnerships you strike up in the industry, always super valuable. And is it 7 years? I don't think it's quite seven. It's probably 7 years for you, pushing near to 7 years for me. Isn't that crazy? And you've had an unusual path in DEX, right? You didn't just start out in this role. Maybe give us the overview of that journey, first of all, for you on a personal level.
That's true, and time does fly, and you're right, we'll have to celebrate our 7 year, I don't know, next anniversary together, but yeah, you're quite right. So yeah, and you're right, I did. And and I remember you joining, and I knew we'd get along just fine. And it seems like just yesterday. But yeah, at that time that I joined, we were around 400 employees. And gosh, I mean, look how we've rocketed and scaled into a $3.2 billion company at the forefront of AI powered DEX. And I mean, I'm not saying it's because of us entirely.
There it is. There it
But
is. Yes, you
I'm
found it.
I'm proud to say we've played our part in this journey. So,
Yeah.
as you say, I've had a non-linear journey at Nextthink, and I think actually many career journeys in reality are like an undulating or squiggly line. And yeah, I mean, casting my mind back in February 2019, I was actually hired to run and form our marketing strategy for Northern Europe region, which is Nextlink's largest region in EMEA. And that formative period was really interesting for me because I spent time getting out there, as you just said, meeting technology leaders at organizations across Europe. And it's fair to say that the DEX market was relatively immature compared to now. But technology leaders across industries I saw recognized the shift that was happening and had to happen, that the most important component, or one of the most important components of the workplace, happens at a screen. And that is too important for IT to not have a seat at the strategic table. That reactively fixing things without data is an unsustainable way to operate around your primary source of wealth creation, your people. So I became invested in the stories I'd hear and see forming from meeting organizations. And this is a fixation that, stays with me today. And it's particularly significant for, as you said, for you and I, because we worked on many exciting public projects together, including some successful PR work, where I recognize you are a better interviewer than me. Indeed. So, yeah, and that's partly because I think I offer too much when I'm when I'm trying to interview because I try and sort of support the person that's speaking and get too into it. You actually are so much better at sitting back and listening like you're doing now. So, I guess the highlight of my first year at Nextthink was running an XLA roadshow and across the UK, and of course hosting Nexthink's Experience conference. My gosh, how much that's grown! And that one was in London, and I was able to work with the likes of Toyota, Johnson and Johnson, and of course the dear late Alan Nance to present on stage about the rise and potential of DEX. So
The host back in 2019, Laura.
yeah, well, yes,
I
in
had
my
no idea. I had no
capacity.
idea. That was just before I joined. No way.
And okay, yes, gosh. So, well, I guess then just to add on to that, then, so as well as Northern Europe, I also then moved on to have the pleasure of also working with our Middle East region, which obviously my heartfelt thoughts are with you at this tumultuous time. But I was astounded by the passion and investment in DEX in the Middle East region, particularly in Egypt and UAE and Saudi at the time, and this was including meeting household names and financial institutions. Um, and then this is an interesting period to look back on now. Around lockdown, I made my first major shift. I explored a fantastic opportunity to establish Nexthink's digital marketing department, which was really, in my eyes, a global mechanism to be able to expand storytelling at scale, which became even more pertinent during the pandemic. So I was establishing and scaling up a department, and that would help our industry create, discover, and interact with content and information needed to navigate the shifting and transforming DEX landscape. For example, by working with search engines on discoverability around DEX subjects. And one key project I know that we were kind of both involved in was establishing the DEX Hub, which is a go-to digital destination for DEX industry content now and certifications. And it's brilliant to see how vibrant and busy that is today. Um, and it was interesting to be building something through lockdown because we found that the demand and narrative around DEX amplified for organizations almost overnight. And we could see that in the digital world and what the market was searching for online, especially those who had to rapidly transform like never before to support a hybrid and in many cases remote workforce. And I remember the phrase new normal coming up so much. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Um, and I mean, I mentioned narrative and I mentioned storytelling because regardless of my role, my favorite part was always engaging with technology leaders and teams to keep me dialed into reality and bring out their stories. And I mean, you'll know this, you'll laugh at this. Often the leaders who are self-admittedly the most humble, to use a kind word, at showcasing their achievements are the ones that make for the most groundbreaking, show-stealing stories. And coming out of lockdown into 2022, having established a digital marketing department which could run beautifully without me, and today has a fantastic team driving it. And obviously, you played a huge role in that. I took an interim role in 2022 to run EMEA wide marketing and supporting a brilliant field marketing team there to run the first experience conference series tour in Europe wide since lockdown, and which again, a huge personal highlight for me was working with Honeywell, with their wonderful VP of IT at the time, Darren Wright, who stepped on stage and showcased their transformational journey to establish a scalable IT ecosystem that slashed human raised tickets permanently and shifted their service desk to become a system of record almost for
It's a
proactivity.
really groundbreaking case study, right? Like
Yeah,
a
so
milestone in what DEX can do, and the willingness of DEX practitioners to demonstrate their success that you sort of worked with him on.
yeah, absolutely. And actually, I mean, it's people still watch it, to this
Yeah,
day. And he basically just spoke about how over at the time 70% of the tickets were proactively raised and solved by Nexting automations, and that was huge. And then I guess just to kind of bring us back to the present, a few months after that, in 2023, I took the role that I have today to be at the forefront of our new global client organization. So yeah, definitely a squiggly line, but an exciting one.
yeah. The through line of that squiggly line, perhaps, Laura, is storytelling. Would you agree? In from different facets and angles. That's the consistent recurring motif here. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I think it's just a fixation that I'll continue on. And I think I'm always looking for the narrative and the headline and the story. And I'm fascinated by, people's ability, to bring that forward and kind of unlock that for some people as well. So I'll never stop that. That is definitely a motif, as you say.
We'll explore that a little more in some of the later conversation. But before we do, let's just stop and consider the evolution of DEX itself during that time period. Now pushing a little bit nearer to a decade and half a decade, right?
Yeah.
Spent in DEX, and maybe using some example or examples as specific as possible. How has the status and scope of what DEX can do evolved during that time period? What do you think? What examples would you choose to illustrate that evolution?
There's so much to say in this. I mean, I guess, I mean, it kind of sounds almost cliched to say, but I guess we were experiencing like this looking forward, but the evolution of decks can only be appreciated now looking backwards. And it's interesting to reflect on it. So the biggest shift I've seen can be described probably in like the quality of the questions and discussions in the industry. So, 7 years ago, it was, well, kind of what is DEX and what is an XLA? And we're just trying to fix issues faster. And at the time, I remember us trying to use analogies to explain the current state, like watermelon IT, which is a classic one, which is, yes, if you fix things faster and meet the KPIs designed around a broken system, it will all look green on the surface, but slice into that green watermelon, it's red. At the time, that's quite groundbreaking. And it's still relevant today. But it's, we were saying it's red because most users don't raise tickets. And the real impactful work to be done, to be brilliant at the basics, which is a phrase that I love, and drive beyond traditional SLA is in the underreported and unreported issues in your environment. The focus at the time was on visibility. The visibility was a term that was rising in response. As many organizations put it, they were switching the lights on for the first time. Now, fast forward a few years, it was a very exciting time when the Forrester Wave came out and there's Gartner Magic Quadrants arrived because they really planted a flag in DEX. For Nextthink, it's been a wonderful recognition of our organizations, like relentless innovation to continue to lead and define the space. And for me, it's been interesting to see, specifically job roles and organizations change to reflect that. I see DEX managers, I see experience directors, I see experience officers, I see digital experience officers being created, experience management officers. It's been tremendous to see IT professionals gain career capital by elevating their focus on experience, which gives them a seat at the strategic table. Now, I guess I started off talking about conversations. The quality of conversation now is around driving experience, equity, optimizing the productive potential of colleagues, making intelligent, insight driven decisions on hardware and software, benchmarking decks, mobilizing DEX ops, establishing experience management offices that can transcend IT and be wide and horizontal, and of course, managing the rise of agentic AI. We're having completely different conversation now than we were those many years ago. So I think that's I guess, the most simple way I can explain how much it's moved on.
Well put. I was going to say as well, you mentioned the new normal a minute ago. To what extent do you think that was something of a catalyst in elevating IT professionals' roles, right? Like that whole period you described where everybody was suddenly pushed to work from home seemed to kind of reorientate the way IT was seen in so many organizations, right?
I totally agree, and actually, and I think we saw that firsthand, from organisations speaking to us about the fact that we did not have a remote working strategy as a company, and overnight we had to have one, and all of a sudden, IT, weren't those people fixing things; they were at the helm of driving this change, and so it came more of a transformation conversation. We spoke with a few organisations that said this gave us the right to innovate, which is really powerful. And I do think it genuinely, organizations that really leaned into this and saw actually that should have a seat at the strategic table, because actually when things like this happen, these huge changes, these unpredictable things happening, having the right data and the people to help navigate it is transformational, and change will continue to happen. So I'm glad to see that IT continue to have a seat at the strategic table. But I agree with you. I think the lockdown was a huge catalyst for many organizations that put IT in the spotlight for all the right reasons.
100%. And it's a different angle on the storytelling motif, right? Um, I, as we mentioned, sort of joined around the same time, and I really remember our former boss Yassine Zaid doing a presentation out in Lausanne in Switzerland, where he kind of sketched a future facing dream for Dex, right? Which was, and specifically, I guess, the next thing, because it pertained to the digital experience score specifically, which is that maybe even in the future, in 5 years, in 10 years, whatever he was thinking, people would somebody or some people in their job interviews, they might ask a question of interviewers, you know, what is your digital experience score? And regardless of the quaintness of that specific imagined interaction, the idea that DEX could be like a component in an employer brand was extremely interesting, and if ambitious, also like a worthwhile ambition to kind of keep in mind as an organization. Ultimately, though, it's never going to be Nextlink's job to sort of command that kind of status, the DEX, but to try and facilitate it, to try and encourage it. Almost 10 years later, where do you think that storyline currently stands, and where do you see it going next?
It's a great question, and that would be so cool. I think organizations do recognize largely that wealth creation, especially in high knowledge work environments, is built by productive people. And it's fair to say that DEX certainly broadens your data landscape of how organizations operate by providing observability into the employee systems of productivity. So organizations focus on maximizing this, understand the power of having market leading employer brand to attract and retain the best talent. And it's a real challenge even for, market leading organizations to continue, kind of that race, right? And it's ever more crucial, in a world where I know we continue to say this, but climbing complexity to manage the needs and expectations, often consumer grade expectations of employees, and in a hybrid and a diverse global workforce. And I guess the rise we're seeing in organizations establishing experience offices demonstrates employers taking this very seriously, I guess, to your point. But yes, it would be so cool if potential employees asked about a question about the DEX score. But I think the expectation around what a productive and healthy working environment and how employers are rising to construct it demonstrates the awareness of this area, kind of to your point.
Another angle on the same kind of topic, which is employee branding, from employer branding to employee branding, which is maybe where a bit, which is where I think we're significantly more advanced, and we've already touched upon it in terms of the evolution of the profile, the
Yeah.
strategic profile of the IT professional. Um, but more generally, how do you see the development of this trend going forward in 2026? And what are the most effective exemplars and evangelists of DEX doing well in their organizations that I know in particular you get to work with?
Yeah, and obviously, as you know, this is a big personal interest of mine. I mean, I think just the concept of personal branding, right, and storytelling is such an important vehicle for that. So, I mean, I totally agree. So, I recall actually a few years ago, it must be now, Nextink did release the Career Capital report because. I guess at the time we were seeing a trend that you're kind of alluding to in technology professionals able, were are kind of being empowered to advance their personal visibility and personal brand and advance their career by removing their worth from being the person that fixes stuff, by being the go-to person that understands experience and experience data that can help organizations meaningfully navigate transformation decisions and drive employee productivity with insight. So I guess the key word right now in productivity is friction. So friction is poison, and there are two layers of friction: technology performance friction, eating away at employee productivity, and digital dexterity friction, the ability for colleagues to adopt and effectively utilize the technology. Manage this in a meaningful way. Even small incremental gains add up and scale in huge ways. And I think the individuals that understand that and understand how to create the right narratives around this are the ones that start to really put a spotlight on themselves in a very powerful way. And I guess actually, so many things are popping into my head. Just to follow up on your last question too, I believe the DEX movement has come such a long way, as we've said, and there is so much potential still because there are huge shifts in the workplace now, right? And I see DEX becoming even more significant and critical with the rise of agentic AI. And this is where I believe technology leaders can really advance themselves personally further. So, to your question, the people who are the best are the ones that align to their company strategy and figure out a way to contribute their narrative in a way that passes the so what test. So, what is your company's currency of success? What matters? It's so easy to be distracted by cool stuff and cool technology and to monitor this and tinker away at this. But are you contributing to the company's data horizon, data driven decisions on transformation, and ultimately your ability to for your people to be productive? The people that are good at understanding where they can be part of that conversation are the ones that catapult themselves in a really exciting way. And we see it. We see people elevating themselves, kind of out of the drudgery of fixing stuff into really productive, transformational, strategic conversation. So that's where what gets, I guess, certainly me very excited to see that in those individuals.
So interesting. There's a parallel. In fact, there was a spate quite recently of a lot of sort of what would traditionally be called writers or copywriters in marketing or such like online on LinkedIn, talking about the way that companies were no longer hiring writers for maybe obvious reasons, but they were hiring storytellers. You know, the
Yes.
ability to, with AI in marketing, storytelling became the key focus rather than specific skill sets. There's kind of a parallel with the way IT is developing, as you kind of lay it out. And again, with this kind of through line of narratives and storytelling and their centrality to success. Um, a kind of industry question though for you. There's obviously, we went from 400 employees, a sort of niche kind of pursuit and a niche sector, to something which is starting to dominate the, again, narrative around the future of IT more broadly. Um, what do you think the industry needs to do, technologically, strategically, or both, to best ensure all the potential that everybody senses, as an organization, as a space, and for all the individual companies who want to push their own DEX capabilities forward to fulfill that potential? What do you think needs to happen most on a macro or micro level?
It's a good question. I hope I'm not about to go too out there, but I guess this is what kind of popped into my head. So it's because I recently read a report that, in the workplace, we humans are disrupted every 2 minutes. And I'm not even talking about technology breaking on us. I'm talking about the reality of work, the pings, the dings, the rings. And actually, to be fair, sometimes I feel like it's more than 2 minutes.
Internet sat there at our fingertips, Laura, just a microsecond away at all times. What
Exactly.
a force of distraction that is, in and of itself. Huh?
Well, this is true, right? Exactly. And so and I guess, just to add on to that, coming back to the report, I read that work on presentations spike 122% in the 10 minutes before a meeting, and calls after 8 p.m. are up year on year. So there's so much noise going on, right? And I do believe, and obviously the science to back up, that humans are not designed for this constant context switching and distraction and repetitive tasks. And so, actually, we're on the frontier here where the digital workplace is looking to shift and shift in a way where DEX becomes all the more crucial with agentic AI on the rise, as I mentioned. And so, right now, we are seeing AI assistants are coming into the workplace to help us kind of do the same work faster and better. But then we may be progressing into a world where having potentially digital colleagues and human-led, agentically operated teams, which I know almost sounds a bit sci-fi, but this is what we're seeing emerge. And so, but the potential, it means that humans potentially will be cleared of some of this repetitive and constant noise and friction in their that's kind of obstructing creative, intelligent work, which actually I think we're designed for. And that will require a DEX strategy built to empower knowledge work like never before, because the trend is moving towards humans in knowledge environments being set up to work creatively, intelligently, expansively, not the constant sea of noise. Potentially. And it does sound almost sci-fi to speak about it, but this is emerging now. And so this is kind of where I think we're on the path of, which is, I think this emergence of agentic AI is something that we need to continue to navigate. But there's a lot of exciting potential for DEX leaders in this as well.
It made me think of DEX as a kind of IT Ritalin. We all need it all of a sudden. I'm very good stuff. I don't want to let you go without a word about women in DEX for the event series. I don't think you've mentioned it at the top, but you've also founded. Tell us a bit about that, where it's going, and how maybe interested listeners can get involved.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for creating space for this. So I've been really blown away by the demand and energy around the women in deck space. So last year we piloted an event at the Lanesborough Hotel last year, because we were hearing in pockets, about a kind of a desire to create something. And so it was wonderful, that first event, there was the energy around it, the conversations we were having, the caliber of, people and discussion that was happening. So we then went on to host two summits alongside Next Things Experience Conference, one in London and one in Boston. And the attendance and the energy around them was tremendous. The idea of women in DEX is to form a global collective, a conversation. And by all means, it's not designed to be a silo. And it sounds almost cliche to say it, but it's designed to be a center of gravity, attracting professionals who want to continue to drive the DEX space. Women in DEX now, I'm really excited to say, has two co-chairs to run the board of governors, Sarah Jones from GSK and Jennifer Hewitt from Truist Bank, two powerhouse leaders in their respective industries. And I'm excited about this because it was very intentional to have two external leaders at the helm of our board, as opposed to Nextthink. They will be driving the conversation, voicing the direction, the narrative. And actually, this podcast got an exclusive here because we haven't fully announced this yet. I guess to your question, how can listeners get involved? So in March, around International Women's Day, we launched the virtual space for women in DEX by launching our LinkedIn group. It and I'm really excited because in its first couple of weeks, it shot up to over 100 members from all over the world with very little promotion. So very simply, if you search Women in DEX on LinkedIn, the group should pop up, and it welcomes women and allies who work in professional capacities connected to employee experience. And we're seeing people join that not only just work in IT and technology, but also HR as well. And we have lots of exciting ideas and activities in store. But a major one that I have to call out is the Women in DEX World Summit, which will be held during Next Things Experience Conference in Orlando in October. So excited about this. But thank you for, obviously allowing me to chat about
Wow,
it.
by the way,
This is true.
that first mention of this year's experience we've had, but there it is. It's just gone live, basically, hasn't it?
This is true. Very, very timely.
Phenomenal. No, they are some genuine powerhouses I've had the pleasure to work with myself. So a distinguished organization you founded there, Laura, without a doubt. Last question for today. Given that squiggly line you describe as moving, however, ever forward, some pretty interesting twists and turns already. Where do you think it's going to go next? Where do you want it to go next? What excites you about the next year, 2, 3 years of your career?
Well, that's a big question. I will say actually, I actually received a promotion yesterday,
Amazing, amazing. That's
which is
awesome.
which
Congratulations.
I'm still processing. So thank you. So
Maybe
I'm
maybe
just
do that job for a while.
exactly
Just
maybe do this a little
maybe be
bit.
a
So we have
bit too impatient to plan the next thing.
yes,
Just like,
indeed. No, I know it's great timing to be fair, 'cause I found out, yesterday. So this I'm able to process and celebrate this on this podcast. But I'm moving to a more senior capacity in the client space, which I'm very excited about. But gosh, I mean, I feel like we're in a very exciting space together. We're in a company pouring investment into its technology and its people, and I look forward to being at the forefront of this and carving, as you said, my own squiggly line journey. And I mean, let's see where it takes us both, Tom.
I love how squiggly it is, Laura. I might be the squiggly, you might be the arrow soaring through the burning arrow soaring through the sky. But so glad to finally thought to have had you on the show. And so sorry it's taken so long, Laura. And to make up for it, please come back, not just in some generic, vague future, but this year. Come back and see us this year. We have, as people will have noticed, a series of recurring guests on the show. We'd love for you to be one of those and to come back and talk to us about storytelling and how employee branding and some of the stuff we've touched on today. Go into it in more depth, address current stories as they pop up, and might be fun as well to maybe if we could I know you work with such fascinating people, maybe introduce pull the invite them onto the show. Maybe you and I could do a bit of our old co-interviewing like we used to back in the day in marketing together, eh?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, thank you for finally having me on.
My
It is
goodness.
it is a pleasure.
Unacceptable. What's
Yeah, it's
the
been an
truth,
absolute
all right? What's
pleasure.
the truth? All right, pleasure.
Indeed.
All
Yeah,
right.
no, it's been so much fun, but I look forward to returning and absolutely well, plenty more conversations and a lot more stories to be told.
Wonderful. Laura Reeves, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's Deck Show. We'll be back next week. And if you don't already, be sure to follow the show so you don't miss an episode. Until next time.